We are officially 1 week away from the start of the NFL draft, and it took me this long, but I finally found my draft crush. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. And welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Sound off in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you can. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. So today, we are going to go over, you saw the thumbnail if you're on YouTube, it's C.J. West, D-tackle out of Indiana. That's the draft crush. This is the guy that I have fallen head over heels in love for. And it took me a while. I don't know why he's just like the guy that I just happened to get around to later. It might genuinely be because his name is alphabetically late. So he was like low on some lists. But like the way the file sorts, right? But I'm going to describe to you what I like about CJ West and why he sort of caught my eye so well. Especially like I watched him in rapid succession with like some other guys, like the D tackles out of South Carolina and Deon Walker. I kind of rattled through them all in one night. By the way, Deon Walker, I don't know if he should be drafted. I'm just going to let that take run. Okay. I'm not even going to explain it. I don't think a lot of people are too high on him anymore though. Anyways, the CJ West story to me is about a couple of different like key traits. One is the ability to stay square even in situations where it's like kind of okay if you do lose that squareness of hips, and I'll re-explain because I talked about this in the Derek Harmon episode too, like the importance of staying square. I'll talk a little bit about one of his main detractions, which is that he's just physically small. For example, Dane Brugler does the Beast at The Athletic, very well-respected draft analyst, has him as the 21st D tackle on his list, has him way, 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 way down. And like the main detraction that Dane Brugler has is that he's physically, short, stubby arms. He's not even 6'1". I don't think he measured in at, like, just physically small and stocky, like kind of, bowling ball type of guy, and just doesn't like that size for a D lineman. So I'll discuss that a little bit, and then I will discuss the pass rush productivity, which also isn't great, and why that doesn't really bug me. But first, let me talk about the things that I do like. In the main one, there's a lot of detailed stuff that I absolutely love, and I'm going to go over a lot of that in a Patreon video that should come out probably next week. But the main thing I want to discuss right now is the idea of staying square, stacking back up, if you will. So if you just want to think of the geography of a football field, I explained a little bit about this last time, but the most efficient way forward is north-south, right? That's the most efficient way to the end zone, or the most efficient way to the quarterback is to just go like north-south, right? And because everybody starts on the line of scrimmage and is related to that angle of the line of scrimmage, staying square to that line of scrimmage has a few advantages. First off, whether someone goes left or right, you have kind of equal chances to step one way or another. You're still flexible, and you keep yourself flexible. You keep yourself maneuverable. If you have to go to the right, you can go to the right. If you have to go to the left, you can go to the left. That's part of it. But the other part of it is just becoming a wider target. And I think a crucial part of staying square is that it makes you a difficult target. It hides the weakest parts of you. When you are turned, you can get smoked in the back. There's actually a very funny Deon Walker rep from his game against Georgia where that exact thing happens to him, where he turns his hips to meet, either to meet a down, I think it's to meet a down block if I recall, and he turns his hips directly into it. And the tackle who's doubling him gets to just push him in the back and he falls over. It's an ugly rep, and it's born not of like a lack of strength or anything like that. Most people will fall over if they're just pushed directly in the back. That's why that kind of thing is like not allowed in a lot of different kinds of martial arts, but like competitive martial arts. It's kind of, but in football, hey, if you're going to expose your back to someone, you're going to get your back smoked. That's the same reason I kind of get really like I get really critical of spin moves. So a key part of that staying square is everything is in front of you. Any attack that comes at you, even if it comes at you from the side, is coming at you from the side in a way that you can see and react to with your reacting parts, your arms, your hands. CJ West is really, really good at that. I spoke yesterday about Derek Harmon and how much I loved his slash step, slant step, whatever you want to call it. That lateral step where you're taking one out to the side and then you're trying to step forward. You want to get really like a lot of lateral motion there. And when I spoke about Derek Harmon will always turn his hips and step into that. And to me, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's what you got to do. You're a big body. You got to get over that. And only some of the really best athletes can do that. So it doesn't bug me at all about Derek Harmon that he turns his hips, and what he's really good at is re-squaring them. So his hips are turned when he's trying to get that lateral motion, but he can re-square them really well. There's a flexibility to that so that he's minimizing the time that he's in that kind of compromisable position. CJ West doesn't turn him at all, and he still gets just as much lateral. That's so cool. And it's a tiny little detail, but it makes all the difference when what you're trying to do is, beat reach blocks, knife through zone blocks, get skinny and knife through double teams. I like the way that CJ West takes double teams. If I had to say a negative that I actually believe, not one of the like prevailing negatives you'll hear that I don't really care about, but one I do care about is he will get a little bit high sometimes, and that will lead to losses against double teams. He'll get kind of washed out by double teams more than you want, or more than you're willing to like put up with, because it is 2-on-1. But that is, I think, a comparatively minor problem, and the positives just stacked up quite a bit for me. The biggest one is this ability to stay square through that, and if he does want to get skinny through a double team, so when you're double teaming I'm talking about run blocking, right? When you're double teaming, you want to step together. You basically want your hips to bonk into each other so that there is absolutely no room for anyone to ever get through you. That it will never get split. And so what you'll teach a D lineman to do is to get as skinny as possible. If that gap is going to be really small, well, you just kind of wiggle your way through it, right? Get your hips, get your shoulders to the side. You will turn your hips for this, and you'll get up through it. And the key is, once you get to the heels of that lineman, is to turn your hips back around and, then be ready to read the play, look at everything, except, an attack from a lead blocker or something like whatever's going to happen next. You're ready for it. So when he's doing that, when he's doubling through that, he is so quick to get his hips back around. And, for me, I keep comparing him to Derek Harmon because he's the last guy I did a show about. So he's very fresh in my mind, but it also was really tough for me to decide if I was going to put him over Derek Harmon or not. And I think that's a really hot take, right? Like, people are like not that high on him at all. And I kind of am, and I'm pretty comfortable going out on that island. I feel really good about that one. I think just about everybody in the draft is going to have some kind of hot take. If you just walked out and said, "Here's my board," and it was the consensus board, you'd be the most boring draft analyst ever. But this is going to be my hot take. I'm really high on this guy. I like the way he rushes the passer. I like that he's very active with his hands. And while he's not necessarily doing like the edge rusher thing where he's sitting up, the way Dane Brugler puts it is he does not like sequencing pass rush moves. I think that's a pretty overrated thing, especially on the interior. I'll get to that later. But there is there's some semblance of activity with his hands and a desire to kind of get on half the man, penetrate, get through. He's strong, stout, pretty quick for 315, but I think a lot of people are going to write him off because he's short for his position. 315 is decent size, and he's strong for 315, but it's not world beating. Short arms, all those kind of really easy to understand things because they're all measured and we can put them up into a percentile and we can get an understanding, right? I don't care. And in some cases, I even think it's good to be short, especially on the interior. Let me explain next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast is brought to you by Gametime. It's the best place to find last-minute tickets, and the NBA playoffs are going on. So if you're trying to catch a Wolves game before you run out of Wolves games to catch, check it out on Gametime. Look, every moment feels huge when you're in the crowd. You're feeling the electricity, especially of like a Wolves home playoff game. So very cool. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when the demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer and people get like desperate to get rid of all of their tickets. And the last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. So if you're willing to like push it, you can really get it to pay off. Save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And the all-in pricing toggle means that no surprise fees will come and get you at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next thing I want to talk about with CJ West is the fact that he is short. It's kind of funny because like there's a problem that he plays too tall, and the fact that he is short actually kind of like it mitigates it, right? So look, leverage, low man wins. You've probably heard that phrase, but if not, now you have. It's just easier to lift something up than it is to like get up on top of something and push it down. It's just the way our bodies are built. So a lot of the battle, especially on something like a one-on-one down block where both guys are just trying to move each other and it's like just straight up becomes a sumo game. A lot of the battle is trying to get up and underneath the other, right? Whichever one ends up lower is going to have the leverage advantage and they're going to be able to use more of their muscles and win. So when you're short, it helps. That's why a lot of that's my main retort to a lot of the suggestions that I'll get in like mailbags or whatever about what if we move this tackle to guard? What if we kicked Christian Darrisaw or Brian O'Neill inside? It's a suggestion that I'll get sometimes. And my main argument against it, because I don't think that that's a good idea, is those guys are so tall that leverage on the inside is going to get a lot harder. Edges are taller than D tackles are on average. So, and they're taller, they're lankier, they're all about winning with reach advantage and using space. Whereas on the inside, on the phone booth, there's no space to use. So having that reach advantage doesn't really do a lot for you. Like it can help, right? Arm length can help you a little bit on the inside like that. But that's why all the tackles with short arms that are actually kind of short get kicked inside. That's why we're having that conversation about Gray Zabel and Kelvin Banks. Well, no, not Kelvin Banks. Kelvin Banks is actually built perfectly for a tackle. I don't really understand why people want to kick him into guard, to be honest. If you're somebody who's like Kelvin Banks, he should kick into guard, please explain to me why, because I honestly don't get it. He looks like a true blue, like through and through tackle to me. Anyways, I digress. The point I'm making is it's kind of nice to be short on the interior to a point, of course, but like kind of 6'1", 6'2", even 6 foot, I think is actually kind of like a nice height to be at. And again, like the short arm thing, you can get, long played on the interior. Who is it? It's Gray Zabel again. He likes to play that kind of long arm move. That will work a lot better on the interior than it will to the outside, because you're just going up against stubbier dudes like CJ West. So it can be helpful if somebody wants to kind of get their first arm on you and then kind of bring their second one, that jab cross thing we talked about when I did the big Will Fries article and the show that accompanied it last week. It is a thing, but in a lot of situations on the interior, you are stepping directly into them. And that's actually a thing that you will teach an offensive lineman. You want to knee their crotch. That's like a phrase that you will hear. Put your knee in their crotch. Step in between their feet. Step on their toes is a phrase that you might hear at like a football practice. So all of that is to say that like that reach advantage isn't always going to be available, and it's just not going to matter that much. It might matter on a play or two, but it just isn't gonna every single time in the same way that it might at tackle. But I also think it's very much an overstated thing at tackle for kind of similar reasons. For one, there are ways to overcome that kind of thing. I actually thought that Elijah Vera Tucker coming out did a great job of doing that. He still did end up moving into guard, but my opinion was kind of that he didn't have to. And I still hold that like maybe he didn't have to, but I also didn't like Christian Darrisaw coming out that year. So maybe I didn't know anything. I don't know. But either way, there are ways to handle a reach advantage or reach disadvantage. And actually watching Will Fries recently, he is kind of a great example of this. He's great at using his feet to get into the phone booth. There's a kind of pass set, a short set, right? A jump set, or it's like, which is like a 6-inch step that you want to step forward. It's usually used on like RPOs, or on other similar quick game where you want to sell run. So you want to step up into that lineman, and linebackers who are watching you to try to get keys for pass and run are going to see you step forward, which looks very run-ish, and hopefully that can help like sell the fake. So when it comes to, size, height, weight, measurables, the kinds of things that, again, you have a percentile that you can look at. You can be very, very objective. He is, a 56th percentile at this. That means he is average at it. Which is a much easier thing, which means it's going to get more attention. More people are going to be able to cite that as evidence, whereas stuff like, well, I love his lateral step is going to just get discovered by less people because less people are actually, even know to look for it. But now you do. So congratulations. So not only do I believe that it gets overblown, but especially if you're looking at something like an RAS table, right? The screenshots of, here's their score out of 10 on all the thing. I use that all the time as like my go-to way to like look up someone's 40 is to just look at that, because it also gives me the context of like, how good is that for that position, which I don't have memorized. So it's a very helpful thing, but next to CJ West's height, it says it's like a 2.8 or whatever it is. And it's like this big red number and it's very scary, kind of selling it as a bad thing. But it isn't. It is a good thing to be a shorter defensive tackle. You just will be able to get your leverage a little bit easier. If you're a 6'4" center, and by the way, Blake Brandel at guard, who is 6'4", I think this did get him sometimes. It's just harder to sink yourself down and to win the leverage battle in a little bit more of a stocky play. You're built like a bowling ball. You're just going to be able to get up under somebody a little bit easier if they're towering over you, and get the leverage appropriately. So I think some of that does lead to his ability to accept a double team, not get washed to hell, split it and go. Unfortunately, that is not perfectly consistent. He does lose to a double team sometimes. I'll give you that negative, and it's going to be the thing that stops me from saying all the way like he's a first rounder, although I'm flirting with it. But for now, at least, that's one of the things kind of stopping me. But I'm thinking of him more as the kind of guy, if the Vikings trade down, but not all the way out of the first round, or if they trade down to like the 30s, where they're like down into the kind of top of the second round, that becomes, if the name is CJ West, I get pretty excited about it. But he doesn't have a lot of pass rush stats. Only like 7 sacks in all of his games, and he played like 5 years. So he played 4 years. My bad. He played 52 games, 4 years. So what's the deal? Is he a 2-down player? Is he going to be a rotational player? Why am I so high on a guy that's only run defense? And my answer to that is that I don't think he is, and I don't think his production is telling the whole story. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. If you're a small business owner, that means you know that hiring is some of the most important decision-making that you will ever do. And that means that the decision-making process is ever so important. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. It can help you streamline that process and give you more time, energy, and resources to think about the truly important parts of the decision rather than the legwork of gathering those resumes and paring them down and all that stuff. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. They have a new feature that can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And if you add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture, it will double your reach to qualified candidates. 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, moving on with the Locked On Vikings podcast, let's talk a little bit about pass rush and about pass rush for a defensive tackle. So I kind of ebb and flow on this, and I don't think I have a great consistent sense for my expectation for a defensive tackle. And I think I'm realizing that's because it's probably more personalized. My expectation for Sheldon Richardson is going to be different than my expectation for Harrison Phillips. There's different guys that do different jobs. And there's a couple things about this. For one, the work that a nose tackle will do in the run does pay dividends in the past. In the past, by encouraging certain formations and encouraging certain behaviors and allowing certain fronts. If you have a true two-gapping nose tackle that can take on a double every play, then it allows you to back everything off. It allows you to spread the defense out a little bit more and be a little bit more overly committed to coverage. This is a main principle of the Vic Fangio defense that just won the Super Bowl and all of its offshoots that suck because they don't really get it, but it's a thing in the NFL, right? So that's sort of those Vince Wilfork types will never get a sack, but your pass defense will indirectly benefit from them. And it's those indirect benefits that are kind of difficult to surmise sometimes. But they also got to be on the field, and that only matters for neutral downs, right? That doesn't matter on 3rd and 11 when you're never going to play the run anyways. Why don't you just take that guy out and put somebody else in? And yeah, sometimes that will happen. Somebody like Omar Norman Lott is on the other side of that, right? Where he only goes in on the pass downs. He only played 7 run snaps a game on average, which is atrocious to me, and I don't understand why people are calling that a first round player. That's a rotato at its best. But just sneaking in other takes here in this one. Okay, you got 4 different draft takes. The point I'm trying to make is a defensive tackle doesn't need to be productive in the same way that an edge rusher does for the defense to work as a whole. Obviously, you love it, right? Aaron Donald breaking things on the interior. Interior pressure is great when you can get it. It's more effective than exterior pressure off the edge. That's been proven analytically. That's a very sound take that interior pressure just disrupts quarterbacks more, and intuitively it makes sense, right? If somebody's coming in, again, what's the fastest way, right? It's straight north-south rather than starting out on the edge and coming up and around. It's harder, you can't, even if you can just push the pocket, you stop the quarterback from stepping up and then somebody else can get it and so on, right? That's another indirect version of production. And not unlike Derek Harmon, when we overly focus on production, which, boy, college defensive line might be the singular position, maybe secondary, but the D-line may be the singular position where production lies the most. I'm going to keep bringing this up till the end of time because it confirms something that I had been thinking for a while, but it's from Mike Daniels, the old Packer, was responding to a discussion about this. Justice Piscata covers the Packers, had tweeted out a big list of all of the college production leaders, and none of them made it in the NFL. It was a whole bunch of who's that names. And Mike Daniel piggybacked off of that and explained look, in college, they basically take the best athlete and they set everything up around them. Because in college, if you have one NFL guy, an NFL first rounder on your team, he is going to be far and away better than all the rest of the dental salesmen on that team, right? Outside of, the Georgias and Ohio States that are always littered with talent, by and large, most college programs, if you have a blue chip NFL guy, he is so much better than everyone else around him that it's actually worth allowing everybody else to just do dirty work role playing and set up the really good guy with the perfect chance all the time. which means that they live in these like pampered, perfect situations where they always can go to one gap or the other. They always, get all as much time and space as they can. Everything spatially and angles wise is set up to make their job as easy as possible, while everybody else has to work through sand, run through sand just to get to that same angle. They're all going to you're putting everybody else at a disadvantageous angle so that your superstar can cook. And that works at the college level because that talent disparity is so big. But in the NFL, there is no such talent disparity. The 31st best team and the first best team are going to be probably about as close to each other as like the best team in the college football playoffs and the worst team in the college football playoffs. That's like about as close as it gets. And that was a take that I had back when there were 4 teams in it. That like the talent difference is not that much. So college production becomes more about who got the most opportunities rather than who's actually best at the thing. When you get to the NFL, where everyone is as good as you, and you don't get every opportunity every single time set up super, super perfectly for you, then suddenly it gets a lot harder to be productive. And guys that just got a lot of production might have blemishes that are a little bit hidden because everything was set up for them to be pampered and perfectly put up on, the spotlight is shined on them, right? Much about production as a stat for D-line. I just don't think it's that predictive. I don't think a guy that got a lot of sacks in college is going to get a lot of sacks in NFL. And I don't think a guy that didn't get a lot of sacks in college will go ahead and not get a lot of sacks in the NFL. The most famous example of this, by the way, Danielle Hunter. Horrible production. His career turned out all right. The C.J. West part of it is that, there is a lot of push the pocket, show your pads, force the quarterback to pick a different and worse lane that someone else can chase down. Some of it is the edge just beat the guy first. You won your rep, but the edge just beat the guy. When I watch, if you just kind of cut away only his pass rush reps, I don't see a guy struggling. And that's the brainworm we have to kind of get out of it, is that if you didn't produce, that means you were bad at the thing. Well, it could just mean that circumstance meant you weren't going to get the stat. Either somebody else was going to get the stat, or you were playing contain, because a zero tech, like a true nose like CJ West, is going to play a lot more contain. But what I saw him do was pretty good for a D tackle. And again, that brings me back around to like, what's the expectation for a D tackle? I need you to do something, but not everything, is maybe the best like vague way I can put it. For a defensive tackle, I can't just have you kind of set up and be a totally useless player and we're playing 10 on 11, right? And there are some guys that just don't do jack all in the pass, and it's, they are going to just come off the field on every third down. I think the Vikings use Harrison Phillips this way. Harrison Phillips doesn't like rush the passer. He gets a sack every once in a while, like cleanup duty or whatever, and sometimes there's just like some effort, some motor sacks. But, he's not setting up and then like, doing a club rip and trying to get through, right? Like a lot of what he's doing is just trying to bull rush someone, push the pocket, play contain, and let his teammates cook. There's no shame in that. There's absolutely honor in that kind of role. But for someone in the draft, someone in the college ranks, you want to see them, I think, get a little bit more than that. Or I'm going to say, okay, you're going in the Harrison Phillips, you're a 2-down player kind of bucket, which there's no shame in that, but we have to decide where we're taking it in the draft, right? That's probably not going to be a top 10 player. CJ West does something. He doesn't do everything, but he does something. So it checks that box for me. He has enough with his hands. He has a swim move that I like better than Derek Harmon's. I don't love a swim move because it exposes your ribs, but he's quick enough about it. You can listen to yesterday's show for more on that. It's just you raise your arm. There's a great place to punch you. But he's really quick about it. And I think the short stubby arms are kind of helping him. He's not, dragging this big giant like tree branch of an arm around. It's this short little stubby thing, and he can get his arm over and get himself back to a nice defensive position very, very quickly, which makes it a really effective swim move. I would rather he rely on a rip a little bit more or something else if he could get comfortable with that. But because his feet are very quick, he can get himself into advantageous positions on half the man or just put himself in the gap he's supposed to be in if he is playing contain. He's a very useful asset. He was to Indiana in the past game, even if it wasn't him logging the stats. So to wrap this all out, the package that I see with CJ West is someone who's very strong, very stout, penetrative in the run, can take on a double most of the time, and is useful in the pass game. What's the problem? Right? What's not to like? That he's got a red thing on the RAS next to the height? Is that your problem with him? Because I think we could think a little bit harder than that. The value question is where, I have to kind of plant my flag. Just how far am I willing to take this guy? And I think right now, thinking of him as a guy you would take in the 30s, but in like 31, 32, like if you trade down with the Eagles and take him. And I would feel really good about that. And I think that he fits in the Vikings' plans as Harrison Phillips is entering a contract year. And if he just replaces Harrison Phillips and becomes a young and cheap version of Harrison Phillips, that's a first round pick to me. Like that, if that happens, I would be satisfied with having spent a first round pick on it. So that feels pretty good. The double team thing makes me just a scotch uncomfortable with that. So I can't quite do it yet, but I don't know. Let me sleep on it. I might get there. Tomorrow's 4-0 Friday, the last 4-0 Friday. So we'll figure out some fun thing to do. And then it's draft week. I'll see you all for all of that. And as always, Skull.